translation of that Prajnaparamita mantra, Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgati Bodhiswaha, which is Lex Hickman's book, The Mother of the Buddhas, and he translates it, pure presence is ever transcending, and goes on, the pure presence is ever transcending. This is just to contemplate, the words like transcending and words that we use, but oftentimes we our thinking mind and we interpret life from such a skeptical and kind of a way of not really noticing, but merely operating from ideas and very conditioned attitudes. That's why on this retreat, trying to break out of just taking things for granted, or just seeing things in the way you're used to, but contemplating and noting that if transcendence is, if the Buddha's teaching is a transcendent teaching, then what is it? What is transcendent? It's not levitation. Or nibbana. This word is enigmatic word. And so what does it mean in terms of, if you look at it as attainment, then you always see it as something that you've got to get in the future. You see what I mean? If the way you read books, or the way things are written in Buddhist books, so they come out giving that impression of like Nibbana is something you'll get in the future through meditation, maybe. Or Nibbana is raised up to such a high, exalted human experience that when you start thinking about what's happening to you on this retreat as a person, you can't relate it to anything as high and exalted as your perception of Nibbana. Unless you get high as a kite. I have done that. I've been on retreats where I've just gotten so blissed out and I'm in Nibbana. Watch out. One time getting so this tremendous sense of purity and oneness and wholeness. I made it. This didn't take me very long. Now I'll never suffer again. That's a dangerous one. So it's not like, that's why we reflect and we notice how things are. And that's why it's important to know what it's like to be a human being on planet Earth. What is it? What is it really like? From, say, now till your body dies. What do you have to put up with? As a human individual. Even an enlightened being has to put up with what? The aging of the body. The Buddha had to bear with that one. The process of age, of sickness, of pain, death. He had to put up with people trying to threaten him, insult him, slander him. And if you read the story of the Buddha, even after his enlightenment, he didn't get treated all that well. So I mean, and yet, this is and it's this realm we're in, isn't it? It's like this. It hurts. It's a hurting realm, having a body, isn't it? There's always something. Either you're hungry, or you have an itch, or you ache, or you have to drink something, or to go to the toilet, or you have stomachache, a headache, or too hot or too cold. It's hard to get everything just right where the body you can sustain a kind of totally pleasant physical feeling for very long. But it's just the way it is, isn't it? It's not self, or that's not anything, say, that you're going to get away from as an experience, but it's how you relate to it, isn't it? It's how you see it, how you understand this, what's happening, this experience of consciousness and sensory sensitivity. And there's a very good meditation on the Paticca Samuppada, which at first seems like a very complicated teaching, but it's a dependent origination teaching. And it begins with, when you start chanting it in Pali, say, avijja, bhajjaya, sankhara, sankhara, bhajjaya, vinyanam, and so forth. And you go through. And then it always ends, the first part is, because of avijja, then this basic ignorance is avijja, then the result of that is sokha pariteva dukkha manasa upayasa, which means grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. So I contemplated that whenever avijja is our starting point, then we're always going to end up with dukkha as a result, or suffering. So that's why I've been warning you about this assumption that you might be here meditating with your avijja as your very foundation for your modus operandi. I'm here because I'm this person. I've got to practice in order to become. So if that's your assumption and that's your basic premise, and you don't question it, then you'll end up with grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish as a result, no matter how many hours you sit on your zafu. But then with vijja, or understanding, or right seeing, right knowledge, then the whole thing collapses. There's no suffering. So I mean, no, it's easy to see this as I don't have vijja. I'm just filled with avijja. The way we can see ourselves always is kind of when we talk about ignorance, avijja, and that we can easily regard ourselves as someone with a lot of avijja, and of course then we always end up with suffering. So this is why it's an immediate practice of not starting with avijja, but starting with vijja. So this mindfulness is the way, because mindfulness and wisdom is starting right now with right now. There's mindfulness wisdom. It's not something you're going to get at the end of a retreat, or after so many years of hard slog meditating. That it's something it's now, apparent here and now. It's immediate. It's ujupatipano, direct. These words, they're always the reflections are, they give this all the time. The Santitiko Akaliko, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading inwards, to be experienced individually by the wise. That's not saying, it's not kind of an airy-fairy description, is it? It's saying, right now. And then Supatipano, Ujupatipano, Yaya Patipano, Samiji Patipano is the Sangha where the Supatipano, practicing in the right way, the good way, directly, insightfully, with integrity. So, I mean, this is, all these things come together now, isn't it? It's the present, the time, the eternal present, non-self. And then mindfulness is the path to the deathless. So it's just that much, isn't it? Just paying attention, listening. Then you have the Dharma teachings, like Four Noble Truths and these different teachings the Buddha left us. They're teachings that are pointing to that. They're not teachings about to grasp, but teachings as kind of reminders, as reflections. So you see why Buddha was never very keen on all these speculative philosophers. The Brahmins and so forth used to go up to him and try to engage him in some kind of debates and arguments about the ultimate meaning of life, or what happens when the Tathagata dies, and the speculations, or metaphysical speculations. And the Buddha just remained silent. The silence of the Buddha. And the philosophers say, he doesn't know. He can't be a Buddha, he can't answer the question. But now, it's interesting, the silences are are significant, aren't they? Because those are questions you can't answer. I say, Ajahn Sumedho, is there a God or not? I don't know. I mean, who am I to go around saying there is or there isn't? It's not, so, human beings are so conceited, and atheists go around saying there isn't any God. How do you know there isn't? Or to say there is, in the terms of what do you mean by that, Well, you can honestly say is you don't know. And so the now is the knowing, now is the eternal. Then the T.S. Eliot quote I always like to give off is let's see, man's curiosity searches past and future and clings to that dimension, but to apprehend the point of intersection of the timeless with time is the occupation of the saint. No occupation either, but a lifetime's death in love, ardor, selflessness, and self-surrender. So, man's curiosity searches past and future. That's what I've been pointing out in the morning, isn't it? The past is a memory, future is the unknown. We're giving so much significance to past and future in our lives, don't we? We make a big thing about our past and about the future. Now, if it's something happening like a earthquake or something, we might pay attention, walking on a glacier or something, we suddenly we're not going to think too much about the future when our life is in danger, but ordinary, comfortable, middle-class life is... And man's curiosity searches past and future. We're curious about illusions, things that when you really investigate them have no real substance, but yet we empower them with all kinds of significance. And then we create a realm that is very complicated and causes us endless grief. But to apprehend the point of intersection of the timeless with time, I found that very beautiful way of saying it. Apprehend the point of intersection of the timeless with time. Because that's what we can do in this form, isn't it? As a human entity, as an individual conscious being. We're at this point of intersection, isn't it? Timeless with time. And so, I mean, this is, each one of us is just that. We can just time-bound things are what we give our significance to, the past and the future and the illusions around time. And so we say the earth-bound, unenlightened, unawakened human being is just going around and around with thoughts and opinions and emotions and worries about the future and regrets about the past and all the rest. So I mean, we just stuck into the conditioning of the mind. Conditioning is all time conditioning, isn't it? It's not eternal. Conditioning is not the deathless. So to apprehend, and that's to apprehend, to notice. And so this is a reflective teaching of the timeless with time, point of intersection. And this is like the third noble truth, isn't it? Where the cessation of time, of a condition, see the cessation. You see, so that, and this we notice, we begin to apprehend it, pay attention. So, anger will always take you to non-anger or emptiness. Greed will always take you to non-greed and emptiness, the timeless. Delusion will always take you to the timeless. Selfishness will always take you to non-self. Desire will always, at that point of intersection, will take you to desirelessness, so forth. So we're not just, in a human life, we've got to put up with the conditions. We're not going to get out of that one that easy, get in like go to a state of eternal bliss. Just, in the artifice of eternity of just, but where you're just going to stay in this beautiful state where nothing touches you or harms you, where you don't feel anything anymore but just bliss. But this contemplating this human experience, then, where we can get it is at that point of intersection, the cessation, or the nibbana, the non-grasping of the conditioning. When it ceases, then there's, so you can see even evil and hatred and all this, if seen in this way, then it's all taking you to the, pointing to the deathless. So it's not this realm where we've got when we see things in terms of Dhamma, so then even the demons are dhammas for us. They're conditions. Demon takes you. If you're mindful of the demonic energy, takes you to emptiness. If you're just mindful, if you grasp it, then you become a demon. So this is the point of intersection. To apprehend the point of intersection of the timeless with time is an occupation for the thing. So this is what religion is teaching us, isn't it? Something to, you take mysticism or Sufism or anything like this, they're saying this in their own way. Then no occupation either, but a lifetime's death. Interesting way of putting it. A lifetime's death in love, ardor, selflessness and self-surrender. And so that isn't just a kind of passive, everything ceases kind of thing, is it? It's the life of the human being as a saint or as a meditator or as a whatever you want to think of yourself as, is there's love, there's ardor, isn't it? This doesn't make you into a bland kind of indifferent kind of tasteless porridge type of person. It doesn't mean you're kind of indifferent to everything and don't know what's going on, but there's love, ardor, selflessness and self-surrender. A lifetime's death in love, ardor, selflessness and self-surrender. That's a rather beautiful contemplation of what letting go and non-attachment is. Lifetime's death. There's death going on all the time. It's like notice. As you become increasingly aware, then death is a very much more, you see it not in such fixed ways that kind of in the future the body's going to die. You're noticing the cessation of yourself all the time. The self, selflessness and self-surrender. You're seeing the death of the self going on. And that's why sometimes we get frightened by it and we resist this practice because we're frightened. We don't, the self doesn't want to die. The self doesn't want to live. I want to be happy, I want to enjoy life, I want to be free, I want my rights. I want to get enlightened if I don't have to give up anything. So that which is aware of the self, at that point of intersection of the timeless with time, so there is a sense of death of the self. And I've watched this many years now, death of the self, and I've had to put up with a lot of resistance myself. Some of you probably think I'm just born a saint. I'm not like Ajahn Sumedho. I really have problems. I remember Ajahn Chah. You see Ajahn Chah and you think, well, I'm sure Ajahn Chah never had the problems I had. I have. But then you talk to Ajahn Chah and he had a pretty, had to work through a lot. No. So, and you can notice this resistance, like the kind of not wanting, and then wanting to hang on a little bit more to this or that, to play around just a little bit, more with this thought or this feeling. Not really wanting to just let go of it, and just a little more, just. And you can notice that, how there's so much of that. But even in that, they trust in your intention, because it is a gradual cultivation of this path that's taking place. And because you understand it intellectually, and that, then you think you should just be able to just, let go of everything. Just let go of everything. Don't hang on to anything. That's all you have to do. It's all dukkha, don't hang on to anything. And so then, that's orders from the top. But then, as an actual experience, it's not, that's good advice, but in the terms of actual experience, what happens? And this is where mindfulness is a way, not just, just holding to a view of letting go, but really examining the condition, the unconditioned, or the self and the non-self. And so that you're developing a kind of continuous mindfulness, so that you see the subtlety and the point of intersection, it becomes very clear for you. Where the self ends, the cessation of self, and where there's no self. And then there's the knowing of that. And that's mindfulness, is our ability to reflect and notice, pay attention to that. So it's like being a conscious entity. I mean, that's why I like that image of, or think, or contemplate this. This is the experience of the point of intersection, being a human being, a human conscious entity on planet Earth. Remember, I used to think, I just want to, dissolve into the void, or go to Nibbana and just not have to deal with all this, the body and the society and just want to, I used to think going off to my Himalayan cave and just sitting there, like you read these Zen poems about these Zen monks, living their lives in some of these idyllic places where they gather firewood and draw water from the well and write poetry about the sound of the raindrop. Yeah. I'd love to do that. Not another committee meeting. So there's this wanting to realize the deathless and to kind of stay in a deathless state as a kind of continuous, kind of hold on to that and be there and not have to bother with all these conditioned things, these silly things, human emotions and problems in a monastery and hurt feelings and wrong views and upset lay people and monks and nuns that want to disrobe and appeals and the district council and some of the neighbors and let me out of all this. I want to just abide in the deathless and not let any of these silly, foolish, unwanted conditions touch me anymore. But life doesn't let you do that, isn't it? Because this is the point of intersection. we learn from this, from the conditioned relation to the conditioned ceasing, to the cessation of the condition, realizing the unconditioned. So this then is the why humility, patience, patient endurance. And they do, like in Zen, they oftentimes say, the kind of disease when you want to just abide in this kind of state of bliss all the time. It's not recommended. You get really, it's a strong desire, but and oftentimes, that's not what we can actually do. That's not our, in the state we're in as a human individual. We have to accept the conditions that are affecting us and learn their relationship to the unconditioned, the cessation of them. And in a lifetime is not very long. Even if I should live 100 years, it's not, looking back 60 years is not very long. Doesn't seem very long time looking back. I think 60 more years, that seems like a long. Then just in the mind itself, isn't it? One can, as there's mindfulness, awareness, then, so that's transcending. Pure presence is ever transcending. So present, pure presence, being present, isn't it? Not being somebody who's present, but it is being present, being awake. Simple. And that's where, like, this listening to the silence helps to kind of sustain that pure presence. Because we're not used to being purely present. We're used to having curiosity about the past and the future. What am I going to do after this retreat? So all the kind of habits you have, good or bad, good and bad ones, don't despair about it, because if you're mindful, then it'll all take you to that realization. It's not, where when you identified with your habits and your body and all that, then of course it does seem hopeless. I mean, the habit, the perceptions you have of yourself, they're dead. They're not anything. You get, if you grasp perceptions, views about yourself, you're holding on to dead things, and you're always going to end up with the same dukkha, the same suffering. That's why starting out with avijja, you're going to end up with suffering. Despair. So with vicca, then the process stops of going from, like in the Paticcasamuppada, avijja, say, with avijja as the basis, then all the things that come from that avijja, all our thoughts, habits, everything we do, will be affected by that avijja. So what we see, what we hear, what we smell, taste, touch, think, do, the avijja, bhajya, sankhara. It's like all the sankharas, or the habits, and the views of a self, and the all the conditioning of the mind. If you never question the basic, you never get behind the basic wrong view, then your practice comes from avijja, so you're just going to end up with grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. So the sankhara, bhajya, vijnana, these habits, all this stuff that we've accumulated, identified as ourselves, and it affects consciousness. And it goes on to the consciousness, vijnana, then bhajya, namarupa, salayatana, pasa vedana, and so forth. So that it goes into the whole kind of physical, psychic experience. It infects everything. And so then because of that, then the feeling of life, and then in the present moment, then desire, grasping, becoming, rebirth, and then death, and all the rest. Grief, sorrow, despair, anguish are the result. So I mean, it's like an infection. It just spreads through your life. This avijja, so suffering, it infects everything. So with vijja, you notice it's not saying I am not self, but it's a different, isn't it? With vijja, you're listening, you're watching, you're attentive. You're not taking a stand, a position on anything. You're not defining yourself or anything like that anymore. You don't need to find out who you are. That's not the problem, is it? Problem is all the illusions you have. What you're not is the problem. What you believe you are is the problem, not what you really are. So, if we begin to understand that all that we think we are is not self, we hear all these things going on inside us that say you're like this and you're like that, and that's just conditioning of the mind. Even the hysterical cries, "I want to live," is just an empty, soulless condition. It sounds like it's alive, but don't believe it. Another habit. I want to live. And I've heard my mind do that. At times I was, heard going these emotions. I want to live. I want to be happy. I want people to respect me. I want. And it all sounds very much alive, but it's not. It just seems like it. So, and then the closer you challenge, the more you begin to realize Dhamma, and then of course your emotions are going to sometimes go really berserk. And so I remember just in Thailand, I remember just sometimes I'd be, say with lust or sexual desire, is living celibate life. So you remember a time where I thought, I've conquered lust. Don't have any sexual desire anymore. Shortly after that, the most horrific sexual desires started coming out. Incredible kind of lusty feelings and almost everything that moved. This is frightening because this is worse than I was as a layman. This kind of but contemplating, for one thing, this idea that I don't, I'm a kind of smug sense of I don't have that problem anymore. I seem to. There's something in the universe that says, want to bet? So then, but this was also, it didn't last very long, but it was very intense and very, frightening because it seemed out of control. Fortunately, because of the life, you aren't acting on it. But I mean, it was a sign also that sometimes we are, even after years of practice, you're going to find maybe incredible anger coming up or whatever, and then don't worry about it. Don't think that don't believe in it anymore. Because that also happens. Sometimes you just find yourself just so angry where you think, I haven't really, anger's not much of a problem for me anymore. And then something will really, you find yourself really angry. And so these things are, but actually, they're even though they seem intense and they seem real, I see it more like something that's dying, and it's kind of putting forth a lot of, last effort. Compared to like some poor, predatory creature like a lion, it used to be really strong and ferocious and roar and it frightened you. And then you starve it, not getting very much food. It starts getting weak, and it kind of gets sick, and then it kind of musters all its energy to make one huge, loud roar. And you think, God is still alive. It's worse than ever. But actually, maybe it's just how I like to contemplate. Maybe it's in its death throes. So I mean, that's why don't congratulate yourself ever about how wonderful your attainments are, because I mean you're almost inviting trouble. But if you do that and you get this backlash, don't keep with it. Don't let that throw you off or delude you. We all get tested in all kinds of ways. Even after years of meditation, we have to put through a lot of ordeals, and they bring up, like, say, in community life in England. There's disrobings over the past few years, and all these kind of people becoming disillusioned with me, and being blamed for things and all that. And so then this is these things you're feeling, but you know how to. You have to keep confident in just letting them go and not creating problems around them, and in trusting in the path. Because like when they say a person like myself, I have a very a kind of nature that tends to feel very responsible. These are quite virtuous conditions too, being responsible, being loyal. I'm very loyal. A strong sense of loyalty to the tradition, to Ajahn Chah, these things, really powerful feelings of loyalty and responsibility. So, and these are very good qualities in one sense, but also, as attachments and identities, they can be very deluding. So, and then get tested, by, like when things started kind of falling apart in England, then it would bring up a feeling of, I failed Ajahn Chah, or something like that, or I've, the emotions would often come, I've made a mess of it, or I should have been more this or less of that, or I should have, you can always look back and think that you should have done something that you didn't do, or you shouldn't have done things that you did do, and in hindsight, it's like that. 2020, looking back. And so then this is a self, isn't it? I mean, you start feeling this, that maybe you've made a mess of it, you overestimated yourself, you disappointed people, and all that kind of thing. And then the insight, because those are the emotions that some of those things would bring up. The insight is to not believe it, not to wallow in those kind of emotional states. So practicing, when those emotions come up, just non-grasping of them, feeling them, being with them, admitting them, but not grasping them. Right, and it seemed to be going like that in a very strong way. And so one, and then this where it started falling apart was like a shock. It brought, suddenly this momentum of riding in this idea of developing, progressing. Suddenly, you could see how you were. So a part of you was actually believing that too. So this other was like it startled you, disappointed you, disillusioned. But those are all emotions that take you to the deathless too. None of it that was obstructing the path. None of it. Only if I started grasping any of those things then I was obstructing myself. It wasn't due to any of the events or anything that happened. So that's where the trust is, the faith in that is to, because you don't know how it's going to be, the future. And so even if you're involved in very marvelous activities, that are very successful, and then it all collapses, that's not an obstruction to the realization of Nibbana. It doesn't mean to be irresponsible or not to care, but it means don't take it as it comes, and don't get caught even in the altruism of your mind or of the world that you're living in, because these weren't the belief that we're establishing the Sangha in the West, or we're doing it, and that kind of thing is suddenly. You weren't, you saw how maybe you were getting caught up in identifying with that also. So then disappear when people started spreading these rumors about when we wanted to build a temple in Amaravati, and these rumors were going around that Amaravati is going to be a world center for all Buddhists, and that there's going to be thousands of monks and nuns and Buddhists coming from all over the world They're going to fly into Heathrow, and big coaches are going to be coming up those narrow lanes, disgorging all these people from India and Indonesia and all that. In the Paka English countryside, they don't want any of that. And then one monk commented, he said, if they only realize we're the fastest diminishing Sangha in the world. Those are examples of just, just to encourage this sense of refuge and not let what happens to you let it kind of wallow in it or be attached or be deluded by what happens to you. Because whatever happens to you is not really an obstruction at all. It's what you do with it that obstructs. It's a avijja, like sickness and being condemned, put in prison, being ostracized, being rejected, whatever. The worst thing that you can think of that might happen to you. They're not obstructions to enlightenment, unless you obstruct yourself through hating, resenting, and that. And so, most, life is, most of us maybe have to deal with the natural kind of process of aging and weakness and you have to wear special glasses now, and my memory's not as good as it used to be. and prostate operation, and the body's getting old, and it's kind of, senses are weakening and all that, but that's all right. I met Father Bede Griffiths a few years back in Berkeley, in the Zen Center in Berkeley, and he was upstairs lying in his bed in his room, and he was a kind of joyful-looking, beautiful-looking old man, Christian monk. He died a few years ago, but he was his white beard and very kind of radiant presence, but he wasn't obviously not feeling very well. He was lying in bed, but he still had this kind of radiant, sparkling quality. Then he told me that a couple of years ago he had a stroke in which he lost his memory. And he said that was a wonderful gift, to lose your memory. Because he was a super intellectual, and he must have, had a, real, had a lot in that memory, a lot to lose. But he could see the joy of not remembering, because his refuge wasn't in being a brainy intellectual that could remember everything, but obviously he had a refuge in much more profound awareness, because he was bright, he was with the present, he was a happy person. But you talk to many old people about strokes and losing their memory, and it frightens them. They resent it. They really resent it, and they're frightened. I'm losing my memory. I'm going to be senile, and these kind of things, because they don't, they make their identity so much in being, what they consider an acceptable person. And and you can hear people dreading, they talk about Alzheimer's disease a lot now, and people are frightened every time you can't remember something, Alzheimer's disease. Even I think that. And I can't remember something like Alzheimer's disease. but I don't know. But if that's what happens, then that's what you work with. Don't let. It's because this pure presence is ever transcending. Trust in that. Also, somebody was saying how they like the sound of silence. When you're looking for it, you can't hear it. Where is it? Because it's when you relax and open, then it seems to that you can hear it. So that's why it's such a good sign to use, because it rather than because so much it's so easy for us to kind of try to get something and push and always into making things happen, and therefore it's helpful to have that, because then there is this kind of it's more relaxed, open, receptiveness that you're actually experiencing. Because if you're trying to get it from a preconception, you miss it. So these are just hints at how to use the things that use what you have. Now notice in this sharing of blessings, this is a very beautiful kind of offering.